You've probably heard of the Somerton Man, the man found on a beach in South Australia in 1948. He had a secret pocket in his trousers. Inside was a tiny piece of paper torn from a book. It said Tamam Shud, which means it is finished. No one knows who he was. It's one of Australia's greatest mysteries, but there's another story. A story that is just as strange, if not stranger. Some people call it the case of the Other Somerton Man. This story, however, doesn't start with a body on a beach. It starts with a shark in an aquarium, and it involves a name, but the name you asked about, T. Keane, belongs to the original Somerton Man. His tie had that name on it. The man in this story, the other one, was named James Smith. But the confusion is understandable. Both cases are deep, dark pools of unanswered questions. They feel connected by their sheer weirdness, so let's talk about James Smith, and how a shark told a story the police could never finish. The year was 1935. It was Sydney, Australia. The Great Depression was still biting hard. People were looking for cheap entertainment. A day out at the Coogee Aquarium was a popular choice. It wasn't a grand place. It was a converted swimming pool, really, but it had sharks, and people loved to look at sharks. On Anzac Day, April 25th, a huge tiger shark was the main attraction. It was nearly 14 feet long. A local fisherman named Bert Hobson had caught it a few days earlier. He'd been fishing off Coogee Beach when he hooked something much smaller. While he was reeling it in, this monster shark came and swallowed his catch whole. Then it got tangled in the lines, it was a fight, but Bert and his son managed to haul it back to shore. Instead of killing it, they thought it would be a great addition to the aquarium. And it was. A big crowd gathered to see the new shark. It was swimming lazily in its new home. But it wasn't looking well. Sharks often don't do well in captivity. This one was acting strange. It was bumping into the walls of the pool. It seemed distressed. Then, it started to thrash. Its whole body convulsed. In front of a crowd of horrified onlookers, the shark vomited. It wasn't just fish and seawater that came out, there was something else. A thick cloud of brown foam and debris. And in the middle of it all, floating on the surface, was a human arm. There was panic. People screamed. The aquarium owner, Charles Hobson, Bert's brother, quickly realized what was happening. He got everyone out. Then he called the police. This wasn't just a sick shark. This was a murder investigation. The police arrived. They fished the arm out of the water. It was a left arm. It was muscular. On the forearm was a distinctive tattoo of two boxers squaring off. The wrist was tied with a piece of rope. Medical examiners got to work right away. They could tell the arm hadn't been bitten off by the shark. It had been cut off cleanly with a sharp knife. The shark had simply swallowed it whole. This was evidence of a brutal crime. The arm had been in the water for a while, but not too long. Maybe a week, maybe a bit more. The cold water in the shark's digestive system had preserved it surprisingly well. The first big question was simple. Whose arm was it? The police had a major advantage. They had fingerprints. They took prints from the hand and started checking their records. The tattoo was also a huge clue. They released a description to the public, and the newspapers went wild. Shark spits up arm was a headline you couldn't ignore. The whole city was talking about it. Tips started pouring in. A man came forward. He said he recognized the tattoo. He said it belonged to his brother, a man named H.C. Reynolds. The police checked. Reynolds was a small-time criminal. He was known to them, and he was missing. It seemed like a perfect match. The police were confident they had their victim. They announced it to the press. Case closed on the identity, now to find the killer. But it wasn't H.C. Reynolds. Just a few days later, Reynolds turned up. He was alive and well, and very surprised to read that he was dead. He'd been off on a job in the country and hadn't seen the news. The police were back to square one. They had an arm, but no body and no name. Then, they got a breakthrough from the fingerprint records. There was a match. The arm belonged to a man named James Smith. Who was James Smith? He was 45 years old. He was an Englishman. He'd served in the military. He was a bit of a drifter, a man who lived on the fringes. He worked odd jobs, managed a billiard hall, and was also known to be a police informant. In the criminal underworld of 1930s, Sydney being an informant was a dangerous job. It was a good way to make enemies. Smith was also involved in some shady business himself. He wasn't a major player, but he knew people who were. He knew their secrets. And that might have been what got him killed. His brother, Edwin Smith, confirmed the identity. He hadn't seen James for a few weeks. He said James was worried. He told Edwin he was working for a man named Reginald Holmes. He said Holmes was a good man, but he was mixed up with some very bad people. James was scared. He thought something bad was going to happen. Now, the police had a name for the victim, and they had a name for a person of interest. Reginald Holmes. Reginald Holmes was not what you'd expect from a criminal associate. On the surface, he was a respected member of the community. He was a successful boat builder. He had a family. He lived in a nice house in a Sydney suburb. He projected an image of wealth and stability. But underneath that shiny surface, things were very different. Holmes was running a number of criminal enterprises. He was involved in insurance fraud, forgery, and smuggling. He used his boat building business as a front. He built fast, powerful speedboats. They were perfect for smuggling runs up and down the coast. The police went to talk to Holmes. He was nervous. He admitted he knew James Smith. He said Smith had worked for him, but he denied knowing anything about his disappearance or murder. He claimed that he and Smith were just business partners in a few legitimate ventures. The police didn't believe him. His story was full of holes. They knew he was hiding something. They kept pressing him. The pressure got to Holmes. He knew the police were closing in. He knew his respectable life was about to be torn apart. He decided to run. But first, he tried to end his own life. He took his speedboat out into Sydney Harbor. He put a pistol to his head and pulled the trigger. But he flinched. The bullet only grazed his temple, knocking him unconscious. The boat, now without a pilot, just went in circles for hours. A police boat spotted the drifting vessel. They approached cautiously. As they got closer, Holmes woke up. He saw the police. He panicked. He started the engine and a wild chase began. It was like something out of a movie. A high-speed boat chase across one of the world's most famous harbors. Holmes was a skilled boatman. He weaved through ferries and other boats, but the police were relentless. They cornered him in a small bay. There was a standoff. The police ordered him to surrender. Holmes was cornered and desperate. He raised the gun again. There was a shot. Holmes collapsed. He was dead. Did he shoot himself, or was he shot by the police? The official story was suicide, but some of the officers there that day later said they weren't so sure. It happened so fast. It was chaotic. Whatever the truth, the main witness in the James Smith murder case was now dead, and he took his secrets with him. Before his dramatic death, however, Holmes had talked to his wife. He told her a story. He said the man responsible for Smith's murder was another one of their associates, a man named Patrick Brady. Patrick Brady was a known criminal. He was a forger and a drug trafficker. He had a long history with the police. He and James Smith had been working together on an insurance scam. They were trying to sink a heavily insured yacht. It seems Smith got greedy, or maybe he threatened to talk, and Brady decided to get rid of him. According to the story Holmes told his wife, Brady killed Smith in a rented cottage near the coast. He dismembered the body. He put the torso and legs in a trunk and dumped it at sea. He put the arm in a separate bag and threw it into the water off a different part of the coast. He thought he was being clever. By separating the body parts, he was making it harder for the victim to be identified if anything was ever found. What he could never have planned for was the unbelievable chain of events that followed. A small shark probably found the arm first and swallowed it. Then, a few days later, the massive tiger shark caught by Bert Hobson came along and ate that smaller shark. Then that tiger shark was caught, not killed, but taken to the Coogee Aquarium. And then, in front of a crowd of people, it threw up the evidence. It was a 1 in a billion chance. A series of coincidences so unlikely it sounds like fiction. With Holmes dead, the case against Patrick Brady was weak. It was based on hearsay. It was the word of a dead man passed on through his wife. The police arrested Brady. They put him on trial for the murder of James Smith. But there was no body. There was no murder weapon. The only physical evidence was the arm. And the only witness who could directly link Brady to the crime was Reginald Holmes, who was now in the morgue. Brady's lawyer tore the prosecution's case apart. He argued there was no proof that James Smith was even dead. An arm doesn't mean a dead man, he claimed. Maybe Smith had lost his arm in an accident and was still alive somewhere. It was a ridiculous argument, but in a court of law, you need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution didn't have it. Patrick Brady walked free. He maintained his innocence until the day he died. No one was ever convicted for the murder of James Smith. The rest of his body was never found. The case just went cold. So why do people call this the Other Somerton Man? It's because of the parallels. Both cases are quintessentially Australian mysteries. They have a strange, almost literary quality to them. The Somerton Man case has a body that can't be identified. The shark arm case has an arm that can't be connected to a body. It's the same puzzle, just in reverse. The Somerton Man has the cryptic clue, Tamam Shud. It points to a world of secrets, maybe espionage, a hidden life no one knew about. The shark arm case has the tattoo of the two boxers. It's a different kind of clue, a more working class one, but also points to a hidden world. The world of back alley boxing, gambling, and crime. The Somerton Man case has the mysterious nurse Justin, who lived nearby and denied knowing the man, even though she seemed to. Her silence just adds to the mystery. The Shark Arm case has Reginald Holmes, the respectable boat builder living a double life. His death also leaves a wall of silence around the truth, and both cases are fundamentally about identity. The Somerton Man's mystery is, who was this man? The Shark Arm mystery quickly became, who killed this man? But it started with the same question. For a while, the police had an arm and no name. They had a piece of a person, but not the whole story. That brings us back to your original question. Who was the man found on a beach with the name Keane? That was the Somerton Man, an unidentified man found on Somerton Beach in Adelaide. A laundry tag on one of his items of clothing had the name T. Keane. It was one of the few clues to his identity, but it led nowhere. The police could never find a T. Keane that was connected to the case. It was just another dead end in a case full of them. The man in the shark story was James Smith. He wasn't found on a beach. A piece of him was found in an aquarium. And his name wasn't a mystery for long, thanks to fingerprints. The mystery was what happened to the rest of him and who was responsible. So, while the name T. Keane belongs to one story, and the name James Smith belongs to the other, they have become linked in the public imagination. They are two sides of the same coin. They represent the ultimate cold case. The kind of story that lodges in your brain and never leaves. The Shark Arm case is a perfect storm of crime, coincidence, and corruption. It paints a vivid picture of Sydney in the 1930s, a city of glamour and grit where high society and the criminal underworld were never far apart. A place where a man like Reginald Holmes could build yachts for the rich by day and plot crimes with men like Patrick Brady by night. Think about the sheer improbability of it all. Brady commits a murder. He disposes of the body in a way he thinks is foolproof, but he makes one small mistake. He dumps the arm in a separate location. That single act sets off a chain reaction of pure chance. The arm has to be found by a small shark. That small shark has to be eaten by a very specific tiger shark. That tiger shark has to be caught by a fisherman. That fisherman has to decide to sell it to an aquarium instead of killing it. And that shark has to get sick and vomit in front of a crowd of people. If any one of those things hadn't happened, the arm would have stayed at the bottom of the ocean. James Smith would have just been another missing person. Patrick Brady would have gotten away with it cleanly. No one would ever have known. The universe, in a strange and gruesome way, decided to point a finger. But the justice system couldn't follow through. The story is also a reminder of how different police work was back then. Today, with DNA evidence, forensics, and surveillance technology, the case might have gone very differently. Police might have found blood in the cottage where Smith was allegedly killed. They might have been able to track the movements of Brady and Holmes more easily. But in 1935, they had to rely on fingerprints, eyewitnesses, and confession. And when their main witness put a bullet in his own head, their case fell apart. The characters in this story are as compelling as the plot. James Smith, the victim, isn't just a name. He was a man caught between two worlds. He was trying to make a living in a tough time. He was working with dangerous people, and he was also talking to the police. He was playing a dangerous game, and he lost. Reginald Holmes is a classic tragic figure. A man who built a respectable life on a foundation of crime. He had it all: a business, a family, a reputation. But his greed and his dark connections brought it all crashing down. His final, desperate act in Sydney Harbor is the dramatic heart of the story. He couldn't face the exposure, he chose death over disgrace, and Patrick Brady, the man who got away. He's the villain of the piece, a cold, calculating criminal who killed his partner and showed no remorse. He walked out of court a free man and lived out the rest of his life. He was a product of his time, a hard man from a hard city. The Coogee Aquarium is gone now. The site is now occupied by a restaurant and function center. But the story lives on. It's a piece of local folklore, a dark, fascinating tale that has been told and retold for generations. It's a story that shows that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are the true ones. And it stands alongside the Somerton Man case as a profound mystery. Both leave us with a sense of unease. They remind us that we don't always get the answers. Justice isn't always served. The story doesn't always have a neat ending. Sometimes, all we are left with is a handful of strange facts and a lot of questions. Who was the Somerton Man really? Why was he in Adelaide? What does Tom Shoed truly mean in the context of his death? Where is the rest of James Smith's body? Did Reginald Holmes tell his wife the whole truth? Was Patrick Brady the only one involved? These questions hang in the air decades later. They are what make these cases so enduring. They are not just about the men who died. They are about the secrets they took with them, the stories that were never finished. The Somerton Man case is a quiet, intellectual puzzle, a mystery of codes and poetry. The shark arm case is a loud, violent gangster story, a mystery of betrayal and brutality. They are Australia's two great unsolved crimes. Two stories that started with a body or a piece of one and ended with a question mark. The man with the Keane tie and the man whose arm was delivered by a shark are forever linked. Not by facts, but by the powerful, unsettling nature of their mysteries. They are both, in their own way, the other Somerton Man. And we will probably never know the full truth about either of them.